you've touched on something here which I think is really interesting. So you said rainforests are really awesome, but prairies are cool too. Now, this is a concept here where oftentimes when conservation is taught in schools, teachers are pointing towards some faraway location. Not always, but often. And they might speak of the rainforest being burnt down or chopped up in the Amazon. They might talk about poaching happening of zebras and giraffes and rhinoceros in Africa. But oftentimes it's not made contextually relevant for the students in their local ecosystem. So I remember learning a lot about Africa or the Amazon or even the Antarctic and the ice caps melting, and all of that stuff's important because the whole world's connected. But research shows, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this, that pushing environmental attitudes on children too young, and if those environmental messages are too far away and too far out of that student's control, will actually alienate them from the natural world rather than cultivate a sense of curiosity and conservation in them. And I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on, making education relevant to your local ecosystem, and whether you've seen that environmental messaging or the fear-based messaging of like the environment's all going to hell because of, the dangers of the industrial world and deforesting, and seeing that as a negative influence for children that actually disconnects them.
Yeah, it's such a great topic, I think, because I have read similar research, and we do try to stay away from that negative messaging, especially with the younger audiences. And I totally agree that often they are being taught about ecosystems that are so far away, and that they're not connected to in any way locally. And so we do try, through our programming to really connect them locally to those ecosystems that are around us, like the prairies. That's something we definitely focus on, I would say, for our programming, because there is a section of the zoo that we're now modifying to be called Wild Canada. And there are many Canadian species in that section of the zoo. I wish you could have come to see that portion, because we have moose and wolves and bears. And, we're going to be bringing in polar bears as well, muskox and woodland caribou, and porcupines. So those sorts of animals, cougars as well, like those are all in that section of the zoo. And so in the past, and hopefully going forward, it's just been under reconstruction lately, but through the Zoo School program, I make it mandatory that in the middle of the week, the students have to go there for programming with their teacher. And so we do different types of lessons there, looking at skulls, investigating skulls of just Canadian animals, and speaking just about Canadian issues that are facing our environment. So habitat loss that's happening within Canada. But I think always it has to be paired with hopeful messaging and hopeful stories, because I think especially nowadays, students are just bombarded with so much negativity about what is happening in our environment. And you hear mostly about that in the media, just a lot of doom and gloom stories. And so I think it's so important when they come to the zoo and they do these programs that, we're speaking about the conservation work that we are doing and how it's making a difference. And also just helping them fall in love with our local native species of both plants and animals. Things that they can connect with, because when they leave the city, I'm not sure if you had a chance to go to Banff, but if they're traveling west, they might see a bear, they might see a moose, just out in
I saw a moose.
Good. I am so happy that you got to see a moose
at the foot of the Rockies, driving through the mountains. It was beautiful.
They're amazing animals and so unique, right?
Yeah.
just the massive size of them.
So big.
So yeah, I mean, some kids, if they don't leave the city, they don't get to see that, but I think it's still important. I mean, I think that's one of the important reasons why zoos are are crucial, because some of these urban students don't get outside of the city much, even as you did, to see a moose in the wild. And so just speaking to them about, this is our local wildlife, and here are some cool facts about it, and this is why we should love these creatures and protect them. So I do think it's super important that we connect them locally wherever we are in the world, getting them to know the plants and animals around them. So I think,
Mm.
like, definitely we have strategies at the zoo to do that, but then even if you're a parent or a teacher, just taking your kids outside into that local environment, local parks, local communities. And you don't have to, I think one of the things when I was a classroom teacher, I was a bit hesitant to do that, because sometimes you feel like you have to know every species and you have to know so much about the environment to be able to take your students out into it, but you really don't. I think the most important thing is that you're just getting them outside, and you're just evoking that sense of wonder about nature and pointing out different things like that are cool, um, and helping fuel their excitement for the natural world. I think that's all you need to do. It can be simple, it can be daily walks, it can be trips to different places that are natural, and then just taking time, like spending time outside, because, as you know, and I'm always preaching about this, I feel like, but you don't get to know people unless you spend time with people. You don't get to know your family and friends well unless you spend time with them. So it's exactly the same thing with nature. If kids aren't exposed to it, if they don't have the time spent connecting with it, and being able to like marvel at its
Yep.
wonders, then they're not going to have that relationship, and they're not going to care about protecting it.